Hello learners, I'm Mr. Saul, and today's lesson we're going to be looking at what are some of the things that are on the ground and how we can make observations about them. A lot of you might not realize, but there is an entire world on the ground beneath our feet, both on top and inside the earth. So over the next couple of lessons, we're going to be looking at how we can describe these things through our observations. A lot of what we'll be doing is naming them, drawing them, and then providing descriptions. And when I say a description, I mean we have to talk about it, and we have to talk about it in a way that other scientists and learners can understand what we're saying. So what we'll be doing is using our 5 senses. Well, taste maybe not so much when it comes to finding things on the ground, but we'll definitely be using our other 4 senses of sight, hearing, smell, and touch. So what we're going to be doing is I have found a few things just outside looking around my house, and what I also have here is my handy super digital camera microscope, which will let us take a very close look at some of the things that I found. And then I'll be able to write them on my board. I'll write what they're called, I'll draw a sketch of what they look like, and then I'll be able to provide some description using my senses. And this is something that you guys can do at home too, and I really hope that you will. Let's have a look at some of the things I found. Okay, I'm back and I've got my bucket of dirt stuff that I have here. I'm going to just point the camera down for a sec so you guys can see what I'm looking at. But here I have a leaf that I found. This will be cool because it's got one of those little houses from earlier, and we'll be able to look inside that. Some pine cones. Here's a cool rock. Pine needles, and then I dug up some living grass that looked like it might have some creatures living inside it. So I'm going to set up my super duper microscope camera, and we're going to have a look at some of the things that we can see inside this dirt. So let me get set up here. And remember, we're going to be naming, drawing, and then describing the things that we see. That's called making our observations. So here I'm going to pull up my camera and set it up. Here we see our first creature that we found, some sort of grub type thing. You can see it's definitely kind of an insect-like animal. It's got the 6 legs, and get back in there. It's got the 6 legs. It's still a baby, obviously, so it's got that clear skin as well, and it's crawling around trying to get away from this light. Let's see if we can't zoom in on this thing and get a closer look. Ooh boy, that is gross. Oh wow. So there we can see it's even covered in lots of little hairs, which is particularly disgusting. And we can see inside of its little body. So this was underground when I dug it up. So that is, wow, that's gross. So that is one of the things that is going on under our feet all the time. There might be animals living under the ground. Let's see what else we can find. We'll let this guy go. Get out of here, bye. All right, here's something else that I found, and it kind of got crushed up. But let's see if you guys can recognize what I have here. Has anyone ever seen one of these before? This is an old cicada shell. And you may hear the cicadas a lot outside right now in the trees making their very loud chirping cricket kind of noise. So this is what the cicada looked like at first before it grew into the form where it has the big wings. This is another thing that was just in the ground. So we're doing some great observations here. All right, and now here's that leaf I was talking about earlier that was kind of stapled down. And when it opens up, oh, we see the little body of a tiny little worm. And unfortunately that little worm is dead. So that's another thing. And let's see, let's have a look at our pine cone here. So this pine cone is, whoa, let me move this up. So this pine cone is really cool. I can smell the pine off of it. I can also see and feel that very sticky pine sap on my fingers, and that's also got a very strong smell. You can see the pine sap on the edges. So the pine cone is the seed of the pine tree. And there we can see down inside of it, there might be some animals living in there, some little insects, that kind of thing. Let's see if we can find. Ooh. So now I've got that sticky pine sap on my fingers, and it has a very strong smell, and I cannot get it off of my fingers. So those are some more of the things that we're going to talk about in our descriptions. All right, last thing we're going to look at, let's look at some of the plant roots that are going on. All of this from just one little blade of grass. All of these plant roots that we see. Moving in and out of the dirt and the soil and all the different things that the soil is made out of. So lots of really great stuff that we have here in our observation. So now that we've had a really close look at some of the things I found in the dirt, let's take a moment to record some of our observations. So the first thing we looked at was that really gross looking bug thing, right? So up here under name, I'm not sure what that creature was called, so I'm just gonna write grub, which is kind of a generic name for what that thing was. So it was a grub, just a type of worm. And then I gotta draw a picture of it, so it had lots of little pieces. I remember that. And then a lot of those little pieces had little hairs sticking out of them. And then down the middle, it was almost see-through, and I could see through it into its insides. And it had a big, gross-looking head, and then lots of legs on top of that. And then some big eyes, and its mouth. Okay, so that's my grub, and then I need to write about what it looked like. What was it doing? So it was wiggling. If you remember, it was trying to move. I could see it moving. It was kind of see-through. Okay, what else? It was very small. Are there any other words that we might want to use to describe this grub? Think about your senses. What it looked like, did it make any sounds? Probably not, since it was so small. But we always want to make sure that we're using our senses to describe what it was doing, what it looked like, any of its details, like how it had hair, that sort of thing. What else did we see that was in this container? We also saw that cicada shell, right? Let me draw another line here. We saw the shell of the cicada. And that thing, it was kind of crushed, but there was some parts. There was a head, there was some legs, a big eyeball. It was kind of a mess, but we could still, I'm not the best artist, but that's okay. But we could still tell that there was some sort of creature there once upon a time. Okay? And that one, I will say, it was crushed. It was fragile because it broke easily. And what color was it? It was sort of a dark brown, right? And that reminds me, this one was sort of see-through and sort of white in the really kind of the grossest way possible. See-through / white. Okay, so now I have recorded some of my observations. And is Mr. Saul the best artist in the world? Probably not. But that doesn't matter because I also included my descriptions. So if someone doesn't know just from looking at my drawing, they can also look at my description, and that will help them know what was in my drawing. So it's important to include your drawing and your description. So what are some of the other things that we see on the ground a lot? One of the things that's most common on our planet is rocks. And the reason for that is underneath all of the soil and dirt and all the grubs and roots and all that, is nothing but rock. Down deep, deep in the earth, it's liquid rock that's so hot that it's melted. But above that, on the crust of the earth, it's all just rock. And underneath all that dirt, we call it bedrock because it's the lowest thing down underneath all of that other dirt. And there are so many different kinds of rocks. There are some rocks that are sparkly, other rocks that are smooth, some rocks that are made out of lots of other smaller rocks. So I have just a few rocks that I want to show you guys, and I'll use my camera again as well. Here is some of my favorite rocks. This one is a crystal that is almost completely clear, and I'll put this under the camera here. Whoops. So here's my crystal, and this rock actually naturally grew in this shape down deep in the earth. This is a natural crystal formation of a rock. You can see all the little lines. You can also see how smooth it is. So those would be really great things to add to my description of this rock. Here's another one of my favorite rocks. This is called Tiger's Eye, and it changes as you look at it in the light. Let me adjust my camera here. So the Tiger's Eye is not naturally this smooth. This was polished by someone, but this is still something that was found deep in the earth. And as you can see, it changes as we move it around in the light, and you can see all those layers deep inside the rock. This is a really great example of the type of rock that is around us all the time. Here is another one. This is sandstone, and again, it has those layers, and you can tell how this was made of layers and layers of sand coming down on top of each other. So there are small rocks like these that are called pebbles. There are those huge rocks that are called boulders, and all the rock sizes in between. That's because the earth is completely made out of rock. And as the land changes and wind blows and there's earthquakes and storms and all those things, the rocks can break apart, and we'll get small pieces of rock, we'll get big pieces of rock, and everything in between. So the earth is covered in rocks, the ground is full of rocks, and these are some of the many, many things that we can explore and observe using our senses to tell others about what we've seen. I hope you guys learned a lot today, and I hope that you have a great time outside exploring all the fun things that are on the ground for you to learn about. I'll see you next time.